Hello? Somebody out there? E.T.? Video game?
E.T. is the Atari video game cartridge you have to buy separately to play on the Atari video computer system. Your parents hook it up to the TV. It's the video game that lets you help E.T. get home.
E.T.
This is the Atari video computer system. E.T. and other video game cartridges are each sold separately.
Ah, good old E.T. on the Atari 2600. It's the worst game ever, isn't it? I mean, it was so bad, people didn't want to play video games anymore. Atari had to bury the unsold games in a landfill, turning the land toxic and uninhabitable for thousands of years. And the video game crash it single-handedly caused was so catastrophic, it wiped out half of humanity on the planet. Except, no, it didn't. Truth is, it was simply a game people didn't know how to play properly. Atari made way too many copies of the game, assuming it'd be more popular than it actually was. And lazy journos and angry reviewers have been milking this vastly exaggerated snope for over a decade now. But I'm not here to walk down that well-trodden path. Oh no! What I'm here to say is, amazingly, no one has ever told you that E.T. wasn't just released on the Atari 2600. There exists support out there that, can you believe, is sort of better. Well, sort of. But, hello you, I'm Guru Larry, and I welcome you to E.T.'s Unknown Port.
It's games that Yanks can't wank.
Let me introduce you to Abix Computer Limited. They were a small Hendon-based publisher that only lasted from 1982 to 1984. But in that time, they published several highly innovative games, such as Spooky Man, which is totally not ripping off Pac-Man, Escape from Krakatoa, which is totally not ripping off Scramble, and Asteroids. Oh, they're not even trying now. But in 1983, while looking for their next inspiration, they noticed that a certain Atari game across the pond had sold a whopping 1.5 million copies. It wasn't a particularly good game, as everyone could see, but a time when selling 10,000 copies of a home computer game was considered extremely successful, they jumped at the chance of reimagining such a popular premise. And so, 3 months later, Abix released to the public their creation, ETX.
Abix, the game people, present ETX, the extraterrestrial Zargon by David M. Webb.
Now, obviously, they took some liberties on the licence. After all, they were ripping off a movie licence just as much as games. For instance, the story is now set in the UK, and E.T. is now chased by the MI5 rather than the FBI. Zrek, yes that's E.T.'s real name, is now called Zargon. The Reese's Pieces are now fruit, which makes sense as Reese's Pieces didn't officially exist in the UK until 2014. But most striking of all is E.T. now constantly speaks in the game, and with a North London accent, constantly saying ouch whenever he's touched or hits the bottom of a pit.
Ouch, 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 ouch.
And meeting up with Elliot, who's now called Ernie, tells the boy to be good, with the most unenthusiastic voice acting this side of a Sega CD intro.
Be good. Ouch. Be good.
Yes.
Other than that, the game still follows the same telephone piece collecting rules to complete the game. Oh, apart from Elliot, Ernie, has stolen a piece of the telephone himself and refuses to give you the final piece until you bribe him with said fruit yourself. So much for a friend he is then. But the big question on everyone's lips is ETX better than the original? And well, yes it is. Slightly. Its biggest saving grace is not only is the constant pit-falling glitch now fixed, but you can now quickly check pits for parts by beaming yourself out before you hit the bottom. Which in context makes even more sense than that weird neck-stretchy thing E.T. did in the original, though having to fall down every hole is still as repetitive as it's always been. There's also now a difficulty option, where the easiest setting turns off enemies altogether, which actually does help the player get to grips with the weird mechanics. But the harder difficulty levels are more unfair than hard, as the enemies just home in on you and are virtually impossible to outrun.
Ouch! Ouch! Ouch!
But in all fairness, ETX was obviously going to be better. After all, it took Abex 3 months to rip off a game that originally took Atari just 5 weeks to create from scratch, which they so proudly put on the back of the game's box. Then again, Abex are about as humble as they are original, as they also posted a review of the game that scored it a ridiculous 100%. Ironically, making the title based on one of the worst games of all time, actually, the best game of all time. Now, I've looked up to see if this review was genuine, and, amazingly, yes it is. Sort of. Home Computer Weekly, to give the magazine its real name, actually gave the game 5 stars out of 5. So that's debatable on if that equates to 100%. I mean, this isn't Metacritic after all. Then again, this is a magazine that thought they were actually inspired by the Atari games Adventure and Superman. So they've either never heard of the E.T. game before, or they're just really stupid.
Way down deep inside of every man, there's a little boy, an Atari fan, and without any doubt, that boy will break out when he plays a game from Atari.
Have you played Atari today? Give a man an
Strangely, despite having a rather large UK subsidiary, no one at Atari ever filed a cease and desist order on the game, let alone a lawsuit. But then again, this was 1983, and they were probably more concerned about staying afloat than to worry about what a couple of plagiarists from North London were up to.
Have you played Atari today?
It's only all these years later we have the context to sit back and ask, what on earth were they thinking, ripping off such an infamous game that did so much damage to the American video game industry? But at that time, it was one of the most successful ever video games, so they'd be fools not to. But the curse of E.T. did eventually hit them too. Less than a year after publishing the game, Abex 2 declared bankruptcy, with their final title being Wargame, which, you guessed it, is totally not a rip-off of Missile Command. So there you have it. E.T. actually has a, albeit unofficial, port on the ZX Spectrum, which gaming as a whole has sadly all but forgotten about. And no, there's no British rip-offs of Superman 64 or Big Rigs Over the Road Racing. But if you're seriously after the worst game ever, I might be able to offer you a much, much better, or in this case, worse, example.
Abex, the game, people. Present ETX.
Does this mean they're coming?
The Extraterrestrials Dark by David M. Webb.
Hello you. Thanks ever so much for watching. Be sure to check out the other episodes in the Fact Hunt series in the links below, or even subscribe if you want to be first to see new episodes. And if you want to be super awesome, check out my Patreon to help me make future episodes. But thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you next time. Ta-ra for now!